Yo guys, what is up? It is Alex or Black Eye here. Today we are going to go over the SMITE 9.8 patch notes in under 12 minutes. As always, this won't be an in-depth discussion or explanation of every single change, and will instead be more of a general overview. If you would like to see a more in-depth explanation and review, then I would recommend watching the actual patch notes, reading the actual patch notes, or finding a different video. Without further ado, let's get started. To start off, let's go over the newest goddess that's coming to SMITE with this update, Ishtar. Ishtar is a hunter that is described as excelling at close-ranged combat. Her passive will proc when she is below 75% health, and will mark the enemy god that most recently damaged her. Each time Ishtar auto-attacks a marked target, she gains an attack speed buff that caps at 20%. If Ishtar gets a kill or an assist on the marked god, she gains a 20% movement speed buff for 5 seconds. Her first ability, Imbue Arrows, is an auto-attack stim that allows you to change your auto-attack into one of 3 types. Her autos can be explosive and AoE, that does reduced crit damage, spread shot, where only the center basic will trigger item effects, and storm shot, that's very similar to Hachiman 1. Her second ability, Rolling Thunder, calls down 4 strikes of lightning, damaging enemies within the area. You can choose whether the lightning goes forwards or backwards, and if an enemy is hit by more than one, then they are mesmerized. Her third ability is a dash. She dashes forward, dealing damage to enemies in the path, and if she hits a god, she stops, roots them for 1 second, and backflips off of them. While she is in the air, she fires her bow and does damage around the god she hit. This damage may crit and trigger basic attack item effects. In her ultimate, she becomes CC immune and summons 5 swords, firing them out in a cone in front of her. Each sword damages and cripples the enemy, and then when they've reached their destination, you can recall them. If somebody is hit by both the initial and the recall, then they are stunned for 1 second. After you fire them initially, you can also move around and use other abilities and change the direction at which the swords will travel. Next, we'll talk about skins. Ishtar is getting 2 skins, Rose Warrior Ishtar and Ascended Ishtar, as well as her mastery skins. The new tier 5 skin is Crow of Torment Hades. This skin changes as you level up, and I personally think this is one of the best tier 5s they've made. Other skins include Searing Seductress Soul, Fairy Dust Nuwa, Shadow Dancer Shiva, Cuckoo Puffs Kukulkan, Dapper Baron Samdi, Bad Apple Discordia, Cthulhu, and Bunhat's Hoonbots. I have an entire video dedicated to Bunhat's Hoonbots, which is coming out soon if you'd like to watch. Essentially, I tweeted for over 300 days asking Hi-Rez to make this skin. A few weeks later, in the bonus update, we will get Cryptid Death Anubis, Cryonic Demon Ymir, Xenothrasher Fenrir, and Winter's Mark Hoyi. Let's talk about the Community Celebration Calendar event. The way it works is that for 2 weeks, all you have to do is log in and play 1 game of SMITE each day to earn a reward. You earn 6 of these rewards and you unlock the Dapper Baron Samdi skin. The rewards range from jump stamps, avatars, and global emotes, all made by community members. For quality of life, Hi-Rez is in the process of releasing a large selection of avatars for each god's default art. You unlock these by having the corresponding god in your game at least 3 times. So you can play them, have a teammate play them, or just play against them. The gods available after this update will be Susanoo, Fafnir, Erlong Shen, Terra, Izanami, Thoth, Nike, and Camazotz. There will be 2 more chests available for purchase with favor after this update, and these chests are the Voice Pack chest and the Odyssey Soaring Isles cosmetic chest. Finally, there will be over 100 more exclusive skins available for direct purchase. Moving on to some game mode changes. Duel will now use the Jade Corruption map, but Joust will continue to use the Season 3 Chinese Joust map. Also in Duel, all starter items and all of their upgrades will now be banned. Finally, this game mode will no longer use the non-conquest balance changes. In Joust, all the starter items will be re-enabled in both casual and ranked Joust. As always, there were a lot of bug fixes, but I saw a couple that were worth highlighting. Previously in Ranked, if you were promoted to Masters, then you couldn't duo queue with the same partner that was within MMR range until they played 1 game by themselves. In this update, that is fixed. In Conquest, the Obelisk Mana Chalice was providing unintended mana regen to teammates, which was fixed. And previously, Sphinx's Bauble was allowing unintended cooldowns and cooldown-based match of the days, such as Grab Bag or All-Out Assault. This was also fixed. Finally, there was an issue with Magi's Revenge, where it would sometimes give you a permanent movement speed increase, and this was also fixed. Moving on to items. All support starter items can be upgraded at level 15. This includes Sentinels, Benevolence, War Flag, and Protector's Mask. Sphinx's Bauble is getting 10 less magical power. 10 less physical power, and it no longer provides the damage output debuff, although it still has the healing decrease. Instead, it now decreases your magical and physical protections by 15%. Griffin Wing Earrings got a 10 magical power buff, and it no longer provides any form of damage output debuff. Fey Blessed Hoops is getting 50 more health, 10% CDR, and 60 magical protections, but the 20 HP 5 has been removed. Manticore Spikes is getting 40 physical and magical protections. The 30 HP 5 and 20% CCR is getting removed. When you pick up the spike, the duration of the self buff is getting tripled. The damage dealt is getting increased from 3% to 4% of their max HP. And if you own the spikes and pick it up, then the increased damage dealt will increase from 6% to 8% of their max HP. The magical flat penetration items are all getting their tier 3 variants prices reduced by 100 gold. Rod of Tahuti is getting a magical power increase by 15. This also applies to its glyphs. But the passive of Perfected Rod of Tahuti will now affect ultimate ability cooldowns, and the passive internal cooldown has been decreased from 10 seconds to 8. Polynomicon is getting its passive internal cooldown decreased from 3 seconds to 2 seconds. The passive of Bumba's Hammer will now affect ultimate ability cooldowns. The tier 3 variant of the physical flat penetration items are all getting a 5 physical power increase. This will also occur for the glyphs of Jotun's Wrath. Titan's Bane is getting a 100 gold price reduction, and the passive internal cooldown is being decreased from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. Shadow Steel Shuriken is getting a 5% attack speed buff, but its healing debuff duration is getting a nerf because it's being decreased from 10 seconds to 5 seconds. Tainted Steel is getting a 50 gold price reduction, and the healing debuff duration is being decreased from 6 seconds to 5 seconds. You'll start seeing a common theme with healing debuff durations. Tainted Steel's upgrade, Tainted Breastplate, is getting 10 more physical protections, and the healing debuff duration is being decreased from 8 seconds to 5 seconds. Tainted Amulet is seeing a buff of 10 magical protections, and its healing debuff duration is being decreased from 6 seconds to 5 seconds. The physical power requirement of Rangda's Mask is being decreased from 325 to 275, so you'll need 55 physical power instead of 65 per every stack. Previously, it didn't properly check stacking items and item passes for power gain from them, and also checked god abilities for power gained, and these are fixed. Lono's Mask only provides the GP5 if you're the lowest gold member on the team. They decrease the protection requirement similar to Rangda's from 300 to 275, again only requiring 55 protections per stack. And just like Rangda's, it used to improperly check stacking items and item passes for power gain from them, as long as god abilities for power gained, and these have been changed. For Compassion, the GP5 now only applies if you have the lowest total gold on your team, and the item's passive aura no longer stacks with other players using the same item. The extra gold you would get from Sentinel's Embrace and Sentinel's Boon only applies if you have the lowest total gold on your team. Moving on to god changes, Nox's first ability, Shadow Lock, is getting increased base damage to minions as well as increased minion damage magical power scaling. And in non-conquest, all of her cooldowns are being increased by 10%. Giannis's base physical protections are being increased from 11.2 to 14, and also the physical protections per level have been increased from 2.8 to 3. Unstable Vortex is also getting its base damage increased by 10 at all ranks. Raijin's first ability is getting a small buff, and it will have increased base damage by 5 per shot. Thoth is also getting some buff, where he now needs 10 less stacks to stack his passive, and his ultimate is getting more damage early game, but it stays the same late game. Skadi is unfortunately getting some love. The base damage on her first ability is getting increased for the late game, but stays similar in the early game. The physical power scaling from the tick of her ultimate ability is getting increased from 5% to 7.5%. Neith is also getting a buff. Her first ability will have a decreased cooldown where it is now 13 seconds at every rank, and they also decrease the base mana cost by 20 at every single rank. Guan Yu's first and second ability is getting a 1 second cooldown decrease. Set's third ability will now reduce damage from all sources instead of just physical damage by 10%, and the cooldown is getting decreased by 1 second. Ares' first ability is getting a base damage increase to gods by 5 per tick, and his ultimate cooldown is getting reduced by 10 seconds. And in non-conquest modes, Ares' ultimate cooldown will increase from 15% to 30%. This is so that his ultimate cooldown will stay roughly the same after the changes in non-conquest game modes. For Cerberus, the healing reduction aura from his passive is getting increased from 25% to 30%. Cerberus's third ability is getting a base damage increase by 20 at every rank, and his ultimate ability's cooldown is getting decreased by 10 seconds. Now for Kumbhakarna, if he wakes up from his passive, the health and mana he awakens with will be increased from 25% to 35%, and the cooldown will be decreased by 60 seconds. The cooldown of his first ability will now be decreased by 0.5 seconds every single time he levels it up, as opposed to a flat 13 seconds at every rank, and they increase the base damage of his ultimate by 40 at every single rank. Now on to Terra. Terra's first ability is getting a cooldown decrease of 2 seconds. For Terra's third ability, the amount of hits it takes to destroy this monolith is being increased from 3 to 5, and the base shatter damage of the monolith is being increased by 20 at all ranks. For Sylvanas, the root duration is being increased by 1/4 of a second at every single rank, and the cooldown of his third ability is being decreased by 1 second at every rank. The mana cost of Bacchus's belly flop is being decreased by 10 at every rank, and Belch of the Gods is getting a lot of buffs. There will be a small increase of base damage to only lane minions. Instead of the stun duration lasting 1 second at all ranks, it will start at 1.1 and increase by 0.1 at every rank. So at max rank, it'll stun for 1.5 seconds. The mana cost of this ability is being decreased by 10 at every rank, and the healing reduction debuff duration is being increased from 4 seconds to 5 seconds. The next 4 gods are having their healing reduction debuff duration also increased from 4 seconds to 5 seconds. So this applies to Sobek's third ability, Chang'e's third ability, Cuchulain's first ability, and Medusa's second ability. Thank you all for watching, and that's been the SMITE 9.8 patch notes. My name's been Black Eye, and I'll see you in the next video.